IVM.
Hello, one. Hello, all. Welcome to the Diary of the Traveling Professor. And I'm Siddharth Deshmukh, your friendly neighborhood traveling professor himself. And as I'm recording this entry of mine, this diary entry of mine, I must confess that this is a pretty good moment for me. This is my 150th episode. I've done 149 of these before. And I was like wondering, wow, what a journey, eh? So when I started recording, I guess it was in the UK, before which I was in India, then I started moving. I went to Scotland, recorded from there. I recorded from Thailand. I recorded from Europe and various other places. And time flies when you're having fun. And it has been an incredible honor and privilege to share the rambling mind that a professor has, as and how that professor goes about his merry way. So I've been really lucky and happy to have completed this 150 episode tryst with destiny, I suppose, and I'm hoping that it's 150 more. So, what does this diary entry hold for me and for you? Well, I was just thinking about all the topics that I've been doing, and I've all the and probably just sharing all the ramblings and thoughts. But I think the most relevant rambling that I could do is about summer training, right? Because there have been so many students of mine who have been reaching out in their summer training periods because they've been placed in organizations, and suddenly what tends to happen is they come across reality. They come across a mentor who does not have time for them. They've been given some project and they're supposed to deliver. They're a little overwhelmed. And that's when they start reaching out for all kinds of people to help them navigate this, because the stakes are high. The stakes are pretty big, because you could get a PPO, a pre-placement offer, that is, or you could figure out at least a nice piece to add to your resume, if that's the very worst that could happen. So it is an incredibly high stakes situation, and you also want to figure out to kind of apply all the stuff that you've learned in the first year of your MBA or whatever your post graduation or undergraduation is. So as a student, you're overwhelmed and enthusiastic, but as a mentor, sometimes you're not. I mean, HR has told you what needs to happen. There's a mandate which you have to fulfill. You may or may not have an interesting project, or you may not be trusting somebody completely junior to do it. So it is quite likely that the mentor just gives a brief without really expecting too much in return from the summer training. Funnily enough, the organization is not necessarily always like the mentor. They are looking for getting fresh talent, getting talented people to join in, and actually having a trial period with them in their summer training thing. So this whole triad, the mentor, the organization, and the student, is an interesting one to watch. So this is what is happening. The mentor has given some brief, and the student is overwhelmed, and then they reach out to their professor, who perhaps they've set up a sort of a bond or trust with, or maybe they know that this person is the domain expert in that area, so they reach out to people like me. Now, when they reach out to people like me, the first thing that I actually asked most of them across these years is, so where is the brief? What's the brief? So once I listen to their brief, what they're supposed to do, it's woefully inadequate. And what may have happened is, when the brief had been given, questions have not been asked by the student because they're overwhelmed. They don't want to come across as somebody who's a little too stupid because, questions. But, I don't really think that's true, but that's the popular perception. Let's keep quiet. And maybe, that there is a bit of truth in that, because mentors typically will get a little short with you if you're going to waste a lot of their time. So my first task to any summer trainee who calls me is to avoid giving a solution, because that would just stop them learning from their summer project, and also will perhaps be wrong, because a lot of faulty assumptions have been made. So what I actually end up doing is telling them, why don't you write down the assumptions if you don't have a brief? Write down your assumptions and get them confirmed from your mentor. Because what tends to happen, and I've noticed this more often than not, is when something like this takes place, the mentor gets more engaged. He looks at all the assumptions and says, okay, yeah, that is true and that is not true, and maybe you should think about this. And then a real brief actually comes the student's way. Also, it's political in nature. If you have sent a mail and the mentor is going to respond, and it's not just like a phone call, because everything is for record. Now, once the student gets that, there is a sigh of relief and they rapidly move about trying to find a solution. But I would again tell them, take a step back, stop it. You've got a brief, but get back to the professor that you've called in the first place and say, okay, these are the assumptions that have been clarified. These have been vetted. Now tell me what to do. Now, this is where the professor really has to be careful, because again, you have to refrain from giving a solution. What you have to do is look at nuggets of ideas or thoughts which you can share, or a philosophy that you can share with the student, while giving the student a fair understanding of the practical challenges that the student might face while delivering that. And wait for the student's solution to come out, because then the student owns the solution rather than the professor owning the solution, and it just becomes a much more beautiful thing to observe. Well, that is your summer training process, and I don't think it is just about the summer training process. It is about any person who receives a brief. It could be a client agency situation. It could be just a situation wherein it's your first day of work, or you've joined a new job or a new role. This situation does happen. And whenever a mentor is involved instead of a professor, I would still say that the same rules apply. The stakes get higher and higher, of course, but the same rules apply. Well, I hope you like 150th diary entry of mine. Many more to come from where this came from. And if you like me and what I stand for, then you can connect with me on LinkedIn or on Instagram, wherein I am the traveling professor. And if you like podcasts like these, just go to all the IVM podcasts and just listen to them. They're wonderful. Until next time, thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I would like to thank the sponsors of the network this week, Cred, Siet, and PayPal. Thank you so much. You make everything possible. Before I recommend a couple of episodes, I just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about Ankush Champanerkar. Ankush was a team member who we lost due to COVID-related complications. He was a really fun guy, and I wish I knew him better than I got to know him in the short time he was with us. But I hope that you can remember him in your thoughts and prayers. Also, quick reminder about Pod for Change, the initiative set up by the podcasting community, along with Give India, the NGO partner. You can go to tinyurl.com/podforchangeindia, and I'm sure that it would be much appreciated, any donations that you could give. With that, let me quickly give you a couple of highlights from this week. Aditi Mittal was on Cyrus Says. Great episode, do check that out. On the Habit Coach, Ashton talks about using the word impossible and suggests some better alternatives. On Advertising is Dead, Varun was joined by Harsh Lal, the co-founder of the Soul Store. On This Round is on me, Gauri talks to Pankit Desai, who is the co-founder and CEO of Secure Tech. And finally, I'd like to mention that we have a new show called Tere Mere Raste, hosted by Keshav Chaturvedi. This time it's a trip to the beautiful blue city of Jodhpur, but every week he's going to tell you about his travels as a photographer. It's really well put together, really well done. I couldn't be more excited about the show. Please do definitely check that out. And with that, I hope we see you again next week.
If you love cricket, listen up. The Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast is here for you. Hosted by DJ, Varun, and me, Ashwin, we bring a fun, fresh fan's point of view to talking all things cricket. Sometimes it's just the three of us, sometimes we have guests, including current and former international cricketers. For new episodes every week, check out the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast on the IVM app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.